I was on a spinning Facebook group and I saw somebody advertising a product which I thought looked interesting and a lot of people were really curious about it. I bought it because I was also curious about it, so I thought I'd just do a little review. It's called the iSpin. It's produced by a company in Shawford, which is just around the corner. And I had a bit of a go on it today, and so far it's been pretty good. I've been pretty happy with it. I just thought I'd talk through the various aspects in case people were curious about buying it themselves. For context, this video isn't sponsored or anything, I just thought I'd do a review. I'm a very experienced knitter and crocheter and a medium experienced sewer, but I'm a very novice spinner. So the only spinning that I've done previously has been on a drop spindle, and I produce yarn that would probably be called thick and thin if you're being generous, on a variable thickness. So I've not got the tension really right and correct, and it's all coming out even all the way through. Like, it's got the lumpy bits still in it and the bits that are too spun where they kind of stick out a little bit on the side. So that's just for my spinning level. So it comes in this box, which is very fun, and it's got a few bits in it, and I'll go through that kind of as I go through and talk about the different parts of it. I've attached it to this sewing machine. This is an old sewing machine where the needle wasn't going in quite the right way, but it still runs fine. So you need this bit, like the little cranky handle on the side that you do if you need to lift the needle up, the manual bit. That needs to spin around in a circle. So if you've got some part of it that does that, then that's fine. So the first thing that you get, I'll show it, may as well, is a little thing to mark the centre of the sidey bit. This wasn't wonderfully something that I was like thrilled about because you have to draw on your sewing machine. So they give you this little findery thingy, and you do that and you find the middle, like with the crosshairs, and that tells you where to stick it. And it's stuck on with like the bits that are kind of like foamy double-sided sticky tape, like that you might use on the wall to put up a picture if you didn't want to bang a nail into the wall. It says it's all removable, and presumably if you use like a removable pen or a pencil, then you can take that off. I didn't wonderfully like drawing on my sewing machine, but also because this was an old one, it's like, yeah, it's okay, it's fine. We can do that on the old cheap sewing machine that I bought on Amazon ages ago. So the idea is you stick that one on, and then it's got this little cap on it. All of the little bits are 3D printed, all of the plasticky parts. You can like tell from the ridges, but it does all kind of just click together quite easily. So everything feels reasonably sturdy. So the idea is that you have this bit clicked on all the time. So your windy bit just gets this little extra thingy on it, little domed piece, and everything else is removable. I will say the installation was so easy. I do not have a lot of spare brain cells at the moment. I'm very burnt out from work. I'm signed off. But it was properly idiot proof. It had so many, the instructions have got loads of pictures, and it shows you like everything really step by step. It did not use a lot of brain cells, so that was quite easy to do. The general bit is that you put this on, you tighten it up with a loosenable and retightenable zip tie, and then you put this guy on, which is the fan belt. To do the normal yarn spinning, they say to put it on like this, and then you flick it round to how it was just now, like around for when you want to apply it, and it's that easy. You just watch me do it. It's a hair elastic as well. Something that the company like has said and then like feels evident with their packaging and things like that, is that they're quite dedicated to sustainability. So it does look like they've very much used something which they do give you a spare one, and they give you some more of this blue cord as well, which may or may not be visible on the thingy. It's this tension cord which you adjust when you're spinning. But it is very much if all of the bits break, if the tension cord and the fan belt break, they give you a spare one, but if you needed them, it feels like stuff that would be very easy to source otherwise. Like, this is sort of setting out string, it's just a nylon cord, and this is a hair elastic. So it's quite cool. The vibe that I was getting from this is very much, we are a small company and at least two of us are related. It's got that that feel about it. The other bit that goes on is this guy, which is called like a flyer, I think. And it's got a little straighty bit, and you put it in until it, and like spin it until the magnety bit pulls it in, and it does a little click, and then you loosen off the tensioning cord, and you wrap it around the bit on the bobbin, which you have that way around. 3D printed bobbin, and it slides on, and this bit's all very easy and simple. Loosen that off, you tighten that on, and then you like faff about with it until it's right. I found there was not very much faffing about with it until it was right. It sort of just worked. So this is how it is. I found the flyer and the bobbin very easy to take off, and they recommend you do that because if you knock it, it can get damaged, and they sell lots of spare bits on the website as well. So if you've just cracked one bit, then you might be able to just replace that one part. And I feel like they'd be quite receptive to emails of being like, I have cracked my flyer bit, can I just have that bit? And they'll help you out with that. I did get that as a vibe. I have not checked that. That is entirely going on vibes, because so far I haven't broken anything. They give you 3 bobbins to go on. I don't know if bobbins come in some sort of standard size or width or anything. I brought a Coke can in to show how big they are. I don't know if they're universal or not. This does feel like a company that wouldn't unnecessarily sell you things, so I'm going to say that maybe it would be the same as other ones, but I don't know how proprietary the little extra ridge bit is, or anything like that. So yeah, I'm going to struggle. It comes with 3, which is enough for you to wind 2 bobbins of yarn and then to ply them, which is cool. I did that today. So I've left everything like this, which is cool because then it doesn't get, like, the flyer bit doesn't get whacked. My first real negative point about this, and really like the major one, is this is supposed to be removable so that you can use your sewing machine as a sewing machine, and not have to like keep it on the whole time and have it be like bulky and get in the way. If I was using it on this one, it's ended up below the reverse stitch, like the back stitch bit, and I had so much trouble trying to undo this and try and move it into a different position, because I wasn't happy with where it was. And like I had to, my partner came and helped, and we both struggled with it. It wasn't just me being very weak and wussy. So I would say while it is technically removable, I would consider this, just with this current zip tie, to be almost more semi-permanent. Like, I wouldn't be wanting to take this on and off every day and like try and put it on and off every time I wanted to use it if I wanted to switch between spinning and sewing daily or every couple of days or something like that. It's sort of like you can keep it on for a few months and then switch whatever. I have another sewing machine, so this isn't a problem, and maybe there would be another way that you could resolve this issue, or maybe it's just they've got a slightly dodgy zip tie that's a bit tighter than others, but that's, in my experience, that was tricky. So I would say that this kind of setup being your kind of permanent setup and then just adding the flyers and the bobbin on does feel like what's going to be realistic for me. I had a go at spinning some yarn today. It had some good instructions. Your yarn goes through the little hole. I don't know how to show this best. It goes through the little hole, under the thingy, and then out of this guy. This guy comes off. This is called an orifice reducer. And that kind of clicks on and off okay. This worked really well for when I was doing the single first ply. When it came to plying the second bit on, so I was feeding in the 2 strands of yarn that I'd spun, I did find that the hole was a little bit too small, but I think that was on me, and I was able to like pull it off and just like let it feed through, like not like in its casing, and that seemed to work okay. Like I said, I'm a very novice spinner, so I don't know how much that is the fault of the product and how much that is the fault of me. And as far as how it ran and how it felt to spin, I was a little bit worried because I've not used a machine before, and the kind of machine option that I was going to use was a wheel which had like a treadle foot to it. I was a little bit worried that this would feel like it was doing too much of the work for me. I don't know if that makes sense. I find that like with sewing, if I'm hand sewing, it feels like I'm crafting and slow living, and it's kind of nice. And if I'm sewing on a machine, it can make it feel a little bit more like work. So I like to kind of limit that side of it. I was worried that this would just feel like I was part of a machine and not really engaged in the making. I was just kind of taking something very pre-done and just the difference between a microwave meal and cooking your own thing. I was worried it would feel a little bit like that. I did have to use techniques. I watched some spinners on YouTube, and I was thinking their things in my head, and that was helpful. So there was, and it was some of the same techniques as with the drop spindle, so about spinning in the tension and then pulling it away. It did feel like there was a knack to it. It did feel like something that was going to get better with practice, and it was something that felt like it, was better and worse at certain points. The first bobbin that I span up, what I span was okay, it was fine. But the second one was also better, so I did see that kind of progress as I went through, so that was cool. And it does feel like something that I can learn on as well. I don't know how wonderfully transferable it will be to every other discipline of spinning if I end up on a spinning wheel at some point in the future. I'd imagine there's going to be some techniques that don't translate, but yeah, it felt like a good experience. It didn't feel like it was just doing it all for me, which I was a bit worried about. And it does feel like it was a lot faster than doing things by drop spindle, which is probably news to exactly nobody. But it was something that was important to me. I want to try and do the full like fleece to knitted garment or crocheted garment process. So that does involve kind of the larger quantities of fleece, which I would then be like processing through. Something else that was very cool is they put in here like, make sure you don't throw the box away, it has another use. And you get these two little wooden dowels, and I didn't know what these were for, and you don't know what they're for until you start plying. So the box, if I take everything else out of it, actually has some little holes in the side. Nice. Helpful. Professional YouTuber. It's got these little holes in it, and you can get your two bobbins, what you spun your yarn on, and you slide them onto the dowels, and the power of science, putting dowels into holes, it's a lazy Kate. So you put it in there, and then they spin freely off this, and then you use that for when you're plying onto your third bobbin. Amazing! This is really fantastic to me, because one of the things that I was a bit nervous about with the idea of like going more forward with spinning was the thought that you have to buy quite a lot. And I don't know if this is just because it's YouTubers and influencers, and I'm just like, when I learnt to knit, it was from people around me. When I learnt to crochet, I used tools that I already had from knitting. I was crocheting with a knitting needle, and like the singular crochet hook that we found somewhere in the house, or that I borrowed off someone or something like that. You don't need a lot of tools to get started, and a lot of what I had I just borrowed. Whereas with spinning, it feels like you need to have a Nitty Nutty and a Lazy Kate and a Swift and a ball winder and a carding brushes and everything like that. And I was just thinking like, but what if I need all of that to get started, and what if I don't like it? So it was really nice to have something that I didn't need to buy. I did buy carding brushes anyway, and then I was talking to someone on Twitch, and they were like, just wrap stuff around a chair, you don't need a Nitty Nutty. So yeah, so I did really like that as a feature, and that's part of the thing that they were advertising as their efforts for sustainability. So if I do get really, really into spinning, and I do want to buy a Lazy Kate some point in the future, or I want to perhaps put this into something more sturdy than a cardboard box, then I can do. But it's actually really nice to just have that available. Like, you don't need to go and buy it. It's just there. It's already built into the box. That's really nice. And the other thing that they keep in the box is this is carded top, and it is wool, I think they said, sheep wool. as opposed to anything sort of acrylic or whatever. This is about half. The other half I spun. This is some of my bits that have been through and plied. I've not worked with carded top before. I don't know if I've worked with carded top before. I bought a drop spindle and it had some fibre in it. I think it was acrylic fibre. I don't know. I made some yellow. I gave it to my friend. She was very complimentary about it. So it was also very much like, Mummy, I made this for you. Very good, darling. Very much that exchange with that very first spin. It was fine. I'd imagine it's the same as any other carded stock. That's about half of it, which I think I mentioned. So it's nice that that's also included as part of it. That does seem to be quite standard with most stuff. I feel like when I bought my carded brushes, I got some fibre, and I bought my spindle and it came with fibre. So I don't think that's necessarily something very, very different to what I already had. This is what I made. I'm still working on my hank and I've plied in the leader, which I'm very loving of how earnest and lightly rubbish this is. But you know, what I've made is it's two bobbins plied together. So I think it technically makes it 2-ply, but the thickness is probably something between like Aran to chunky, depending on the different bits. It's not as bad as like I keep imagining it is. There is definitely a part in here where it broke, and so it's not wonderfully plied together throughout. But yeah, I made it and it wasn't all that difficult, and it did feel like I said, it got better. I did struggle a little bit with when I was plying, it ended up overspinning because it needed a different amount of tension. Like I had to have my arm a bit further out. So when I was when I was working on it to ply it, I sort of held my hand there, and when I was just spinning it, it was there, and when I was plying it, it was more like that far away. And it was a little bit of a knack to know like how much to hold and where to hold it and how to let the tension as it goes, like inchworm or park and draft methods. I don't know much about spinning, so that might be me. That might just be like recalibrating to a new tool, and that would be the same for any of it, but just worth mentioning. And also when it overspun, so it was ending up too much spinning and not going onto the bobbin because I was holding it too close and I needed to hold it a bit further away and a bit looser. I found it quite tricky to go back and like undo because stuff was coming off, and again, that might just be using anything more complex than a drop spindle where you can just kind of stop and think about what you're doing for a few seconds, but that was just something else that came up for me that was a bit trickier. I think it's obviously if you're doing 2 single plies and then plying them together, then you get more practice at doing the single ply than you do applying them together, because you do one part twice and then the other part only once, so that's probably something that's just going to be better later on. As far as running it for accessibility, because I know that some people that like to spin have disabilities, I found everything's quite sort of big and quite visible. It is white as well, so you've got like a good light reflectivity, you can really see what you're doing. Body-wise, I found that the position wasn't very physically demanding. If I had this on a bigger table, it's on a footstool that looks like a sheep. Which is really perfect thinking of that. If it was on a bigger table, I might have been able to like rest my elbow on it as well. I felt a little bit of fatigue in my shoulder from like holding it. I'd say that the yarn that I spun probably spent 2 hours maybe, from including like reading the instructions and working it out and stuff. So bear that in mind for your own self. I was able to sit in a really upright position. I didn't need to hunch over it at all or to get particularly close to it. It felt quite comfortable on my back because of that. For operating, sewing machines are run by a pedal foot. So, you know, you're pressing your foot down. I'm sat on the floor with this one, so I usually end up using my knee or some strange contorted position to put my foot down. But one of the really cool things about this sewing machine is that it's got this switch, which has got off LH. So this actually has 2 speed settings for it to just auto run. And I really liked that. And I found that I was generally able to kind of get going with that, so I didn't need to think about putting my foot down on the pedal at all. But then it did sometimes meant that like it would run away with me and I'd have to kind of stop and go back and stuff. But that was very manageable. So yeah, overall, I'd say this is a good product. It cost something like £89, I think, so about £90, and that is so much cheaper than anything that I had seen. The electric ones that I was looking up, and I was starting to think that maybe the spinning wheel that I'd bought might not be it, and maybe I'd just find sort of an electric one to try on, were about £2,000 or £3,000, I think, and actual spinning wheels were definitely like multiple hundreds. It was like 200 or something pounds, and the one that I bought was £90, but like I said, that was a display one. And I had to drive 2 hours for that because that was it was on Facebook Marketplace, and it was the cheapest one. So money wise, this is so much more accessible. Like the only thing that is cheaper was a drop spindle, which I paid like £7 for or something like that, like properly accessible amount. So yeah, I would recommend it if you're into the idea of spinning, if you've maybe had a bit of a go with a drop spindle and you want to try something different. It is nice that it loads it on the bobbin, so you don't have to like spin it and then wind it like you do with the drop spindle. That makes a lot of sense to me. I think there are probably other spindles that do it, but keep investigating. Like I said, I don't know much about spinning. But yeah, overall, I'd recommend it. If you happen to have a spare old sewing machine lying around, maybe one that's got some faults in it but still runs and this bit spins around, install it on that, because I think this is going to be a lot of faff to be on and off. But if it doesn't cover things that you need, you can just use it on your regular sewing machine and leave it on there all the time. I don't think this would be vastly in the way if I just wanted to like run things through, with the exception of the back stitch. So you might still be alright even if you can't take it on and off, but that's the only really negative thing I have to say about it. Other than that, I'm excited to finally get going on the alpaca fleece that's been sat up in my bedroom in 2 big black bin bags for maybe more than a year now. Stay safe.